point where Jesus had a lot of these different conversations with people, and you could almost call them a draw the line in the sand moment, okay? Now, what I want you to hear when I say that is that so a lot of times I'll have people come back and pray for me before I come and preach, and Pastor Doug came back today, and he gave a visual of, a lot of times the way we see Jesus' face is with a scowl, but it never is. It's always with a welcoming smile and something that is arms wide open. And as you hear Jesus drawing a line in the sand, I want you to picture that, okay? Because a lot of times we picture something completely different of whatever we put on God. However, we thought he is responding to us, because a lot of times it's the way we respond to people, right? And so if you do something wrong to somebody, you expect to see a negative look on their face, maybe a negative reaction towards you, but that is not what you're going to get from Jesus. And so as you hear this today, I want you to just picture whatever it is that you think Jesus looks like. I want you to picture that smile on his face to you. Okay, everybody close your eyes real quick. Got the picture in your mind? I mean, we can just do this all service. That's fine. You got the picture in your mind? Okay, good. Open. It's not me. It's whatever is up here, right? Big smile, pearly whites, feathered hair, just like Hollywood portrays him. Okay? Totally kidding. All right? But as we jump into this, I want you to start to think about, we're landing the plane for the Spectator series, and we're moving into the rest of this year and beyond in something that we're calling following the way. And this is how Jesus would have lived his own life. It's how he instructed his followers to live their lives. And if you were interacted with back in Jesus' day after his death, and they would have come across you as a follower of him, they would have said, oh, you are practicing the way. You're a part of the way. That's what they called the gospel back then, or following Jesus. And so we are practicing the way of Jesus here in our city. Now, I believe there's one feeling and emotion for all people, no matter who you are or where you are in the world, that decides what we will believe and how we act. Any guesses? Let me read it again. I believe there's one feeling and emotion for all people, no matter who you are or where you are in the world, that decides what we will believe and how we act. Any guesses? Who said that? One of our elders, smart guy. It's the word fear. You guys agree with that? Yeah? It's fear. I've done this before, but raise your hand if you like change. Okay, statistically about 1.5% of you, because there's a half a hand raised. Okay? So if we can all agree that in this room, now I would make 2%, because I honestly, change does not bother me. I like it. I anticipate it, kind of look forward to it. So if we'll just say 98% of you do not like change, fear is your greatest fear. Fear is your greatest nemesis. Fear is the thing that's going to continually keep you wanting to not change, right? Fear of the unknown. No, I like my life the way it is. I don't want things to change. It's going to be fear. And it's the universal thing that puts all of us together on the planet in one solitary thing that says fear is that one single thing. So statistically, we are at our most content and happiest when everything in our life is running smooth, and we are content with the way things are, even if they aren't great. We at least know what to expect, and it gives us a level of comfort. So I want you to think about that. Even if your life is not great, but not anything is changing, you are satisfied with your life because it's not changing. That doesn't even make sense when you say that out loud, does it? But that's the comfort that it brings us, okay? Now, I started to research and look around at this idea of fear. It's an emotion that is used by all of us at some point in our lives, and most of us a lot of times, but it's used exhaustively almost by the media and the marketers. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Think about this. If a headline reads, everything is the same as it was yesterday, sleep well tonight. The stock market closed strong. Gas prices are down with no threat of going up. COVID has become something that we will just have around. Use your own precautions, and everyone seems to be getting along in the world. You would have no reason to watch any of those news stories, would you? Why would you? It's the same as it was yesterday. I don't need to check anything today. It's fine. Instead, the media and the marketers use a much different strategy to get us hooked in. I want you to think about the commercials that you hear about medications or supplements or new diet plans. Any of you guys ever happen to wake up in the middle of the night, your TV's on, and you hear those advertisements for diet plans or for medicines that are being introduced to the market? Okay, these are hilarious. Think about this. A medicine may say something like, this medicine could cause a third eye to appear. Your left arm could get shorter. Your life expectancy will go down. You'll have explosive diarrhea at the worst time possible. But in clinical trials, this has helped 3 people. If you have this disease, you cannot live without this medicine. And we buy the medicine because we might be number 4. Because there's a fear that's induced that goes, ooh, man, it works. Sorry for those other people, that won't be me. But these diet plans crack me up. There's literally 7 people that it worked for, and they're shown and reshown the entire 30-minute infomercial as the fitness industry profits billions of dollars a year because you're going to be number 8, right? So what happens is we have a fear that it's worked for those people. This medicine has worked for them. Maybe it's going to be for me. I should try this. A new kind of fear was introduced in an acronym a few years back called FOMO. We're so convinced that if we don't stay connected to everything the people we follow online are doing, we are going to miss something and not be able to talk about it, and then we will look dumb. Think about your conversations today. Bro, this video that I saw, and you give one word to the other person, they're like, yeah, man, I saw that. Is that not a normal conversation today? I actually miss the days when somebody used to call me and say, hey, we're pregnant. Or you haven't seen your friends in a really long time and you come in and you can tell she's put on a little bit of weight, but you don't should we ask if she's pregnant? And that awkward conversation, you're going to miss out on that, man. I feel bad for you for that. Because we're fearing constantly missing out on something. Fear plays a part in all of us, whether we like to admit it or not. It was actually the very first tactic ever used to bring sin into the world, and it's used relentlessly today to manipulate us. Today we're talking about a total surrender. For most of us, that just invoked a little fear in us. This is where the enemy is going to start in on you. Don't believe his lies. It is his only weapon. Satan convinced Eve in the garden that God was holding out on her, and that when she ate the piece of fruit, her eyes would be opened and she would be just like God, knowing the difference between good and evil. Obviously, her thought was, what? Why would he hold out on us? I thought he wanted what was best for us. I want to know the difference between good and evil. See, her fear of missing out on what God actually had for her, Adam the same, is what actually introduced sin into the world. It was the first tactic of the enemy. It is still the only play he knows how to run. And I want you to listen to that very carefully. It is the only play he knows how to run. It's the first one he ever played, and it's the one that he played with Jesus when he was tempting him in the wilderness for 40 days. It's the play he's going to run on you too. He's a liar. His only weapon are lies, and they sound convincing. And so he is going to talk to you in such a subtle tone today that you're going to believe him if you are not very carefully and closely honed into what Jesus is saying today. I want you to hear this one more time. He's a liar. He runs one play, and that is all the ammunition that he has. Now, he's smart. I will give him that. He knows what you're thinking. He knows what you like. He knows all the things that would entice you away from a total surrender to Jesus. And he's going to use those against you today. But if you can understand what he's doing, he has no place in your life. Church, I want what Jesus wants for you. Not as bad as Jesus wants it for you, but man, I want it for you. If I could take you inside of my mind and let you see what actually happened in my life when I totally surrendered to Jesus, I promise you, you would never give this a second thought. But I can't. You can't see what it was like for me to go through that process. You have to go through that process on your own. And I believed the lies. That's why it took me 2 years of wrestling with Jesus to completely surrender my life to him. See, we're caught in a trap today. We at some level agree with existentialism that says no one can tell us what to do or what we should do, and we certainly won't listen to traditional people to do whatever we want to do, whatever we want, and whatever makes us happy. But we seem to be lost, continually searching for something that will make us happy longer than a few months or years, something that will give us purpose and meaning to this life. There's an ache we all feel today, it seems. For some of us, it's something that gnaws at us and we just can't figure it out. For some of us, that gnawing was once there and we tried to figure it out, but we started to ignore it and eventually it went away and now we're just kind of floating through life. See, the world we live in is in no shortage of what will make us, quote unquote, happy, successful, rich, and our name known. But my question is, with so many options available to us, why is suicide the highest it's ever been? Rising in 2020 in males ages 10 to 14 by 13%. By females aged 15 to 24 by 4%. Boys are taking their lives starting at the age of 10 at a rate we've never seen before, church. This is probably the saddest thing I've read in so long. Boys as early as 10 and girls as early as 15 contemplating and actually taking their own lives. Antidepressants are being prescribed at a rate we've never, ever seen before, and yet we're convinced this world has so much to offer us. 10-year-old boys should not be contemplating ending their life. They should be outside playing with toys and playing with their friends, and yet because we believe the world has something better to offer us than Jesus, it is messing with our society so much, and it's interrupting the construct of how this is supposed to be. And I am not against technology or phones, but I am telling you, it's because everyone has a phone glued to their face, and they are constantly fearful of missing out. And it is creating something inside of us that says, I don't have what they have, I'll never have what they have, my life would actually be better if I wasn't even here. As a 10-year-old boy? Church, this is so sad to me. Like, this is where we're at as a society in America. The enemy is a liar. He runs one play. He is ruthless. He doesn't care the age of people. All he wants is destruction and death and shame. And yet, for whatever reason, people who truly find their life and meaning and purpose in Jesus are the bad guys today. Jesus is a hypocrite. He's a liar. He doesn't like this group of people. He doesn't like this group of people. He doesn't like this group of people. He's made to be the bad guy. And yet, children who follow what the world says will make them happy are taking their own lives. This is ridiculous and cannot be anymore. Church, I want you to understand the reason why Jesus is calling us to make this decision is because something has to change in the world. So what do? Where do we turn? Fortunately for us, there is something else. His name is Jesus. He offers us something that no one else has ever offered us, and that is salvation in him, a rest that you're looking for, the life you're searching for. But there is something I need you to understand very clearly about this offer. It requires your total surrender. Let's look at Luke chapter 9, verse 23. We looked at this last week, and we're going to look at it again, and then we're going to read another passage here in just a minute in Matthew. But I want you to see what Jesus means when he says something like this. In Luke 9, starting in verse 23, here's what he said. People were following after him, and they were asking him some questions, and he's talking to his disciples. And in verse 23, he says, then he said to them all, if anyone wants to follow after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life because of me will save it. None of this seems to make any sense whatsoever, does it? Wait, if I save my life, I'll lose you. If I lose my life, you'll save me. Like, this doesn't seem to make sense and resonate with us. But he goes on and he makes a statement. What does it benefit someone if he gains the whole world and yet loses or forfeits himself or his own soul? I mean, I want you to imagine literally having the most money of anyone in the world. Honestly, I mean, it would be an absolute blast. I would have so much fun with this. Probably for a year or so, I would think. I mean, you'd go all over the world. You'd have whatever in the world you wanted. You would, quote unquote, help other people, even though you'd never miss that money. But then there's a point, even if you're the wealthiest person in the world that has everything you want at your fingertips, where you go, this is it? Now, I'm sure you'd like to try and see if you could go longer, right? I get that, so would I. But this is what I want you to see. It doesn't matter who you envy, who you want to be, who you see. They come to a point, whether they have everything you've ever wanted, where they go, this cannot be all that there is. And this is why Jesus' paradox seems so odd, because this is not what we're taught. He goes on to say, look at the next one. For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in glory, and that of the Father and the holy angels. So, the amount of people who call themselves followers of Jesus today but don't actually follow what he says, that's who he's speaking to. I'm going to show you a picture of somebody. We're going to keep this up on the screen as I talk about him. This man's name is Jossie Chaco. Jossie wanted to be a businessman, rejecting his grandparents' push to go into ministry like they were. He started in business and then reluctantly went to a Christian school, but he wanted to do administration, not be a missionary. He met a girl and got married, and they decided to go to India on their honeymoon, where he is from. As they arrive, a homeless boy starts talking to them at the train station. Jossie is watching him hustle as an entrepreneur and wants to help him because Jossie was already a successful entrepreneur. He takes the boy on his honeymoon with him. You guys catch that part? And his wife agreed to this. His wife was actually all for it. He helped him set up a shoe repair business, but something else was happening. God gave him a vision and a calling for India. He and his wife started, in part, a holistic approach to training and planting churches in the poorest parts of northern India. His parents and grandparents told him not to, since he was from southern India, but he went anyways. It took some time to get going. There was great opposition, but then there was a breakthrough. They planted a church, and then a few more, then a dozen about a year later, and then they were planting one a day, and then they were planting 10 a day, and now it's even more. And he feels like God has called him to plant, through training indigenous leaders, 100,000 churches by 2030. Jossie and his wife Jenny understand total surrender. You would have never known this guy's name if I didn't put his face on the screen. But I would hate to be standing behind him when he throws his crowns at Jesus' feet, because you're going to be standing there for a really long time. This is what it means to have total surrender. He was headed for a multi-million-dollar career. And God, through an orphan boy, showed him, that is not what I want for your life. Look at this next slide. Although we don't know the names of these men, we know that they're Navy SEALs. You may know some about the SEALs, but let me give you some greater insights. In the third week of Bud's training, there is something called Hell Week. It's 5.5 days long. They will sleep under 4 hours at entire time. They will constantly be moving through physical drills, log carries, carrying boats over their head, swimming in the freezing cold ocean. They will run over 200 miles that week, be physically training for 20 plus hours a day. They are told that if they graduate Hell Week, they are signing up for a life that no one will ever know anything about. No one will ever really know their names or the missions that they do. It'll never be recorded in history books, and all the medals they receive will never be seen by anyone. They pack their own body bag with them on every mission, and they totally understand surrender, ultimate surrender. Nobody pays these guys to sign up. They voluntarily do this for the protection of our country, because they understand total surrender. Total surrender is a concept we are not very familiar with today in our own lives. There are very few men and women like Jossie Chaco in the world today. You probably would have not known his name if I wouldn't have told you who they were. There are only 2,450 active duty SEALs in the world today. That is 0.00035% of the population. Why are there so few of these people who understand total surrender? Well, there actually are more than we will ever know because they don't care if anyone knows their name. There are pastors and leaders in Africa and India that I have the privilege of being a part of their ministries that are planting more churches and seeing more people come to Jesus and salvation than we could ever count because it's exploded past the point that anyone can even keep track of it, but no one will ever know their names. But here in America, Barna recently released a survey that said 65% of 18 to 42-year-olds have made a personal commitment to Jesus. This seems encouraging, but the survey went on to show that only 23% of them believe sex outside of marriage is wrong. Only 13% of them thought getting drunk was a sin, and the list goes on and on and on it goes. 65% say they're committed to Jesus, but most of them are not committed in every area of their lives and could not be considered followers of Jesus. Why would Jesus call us to this? It's really simple. He knows if we would completely surrender, we will realize we finally have the life we've been searching for. I want you to go to Matthew 19, and I want to read you something of an interaction he had with a young guy in his day. I think we're going to have some correlation to this in our own lives. But let's read it and see what Jesus has to say about this. In Matthew 19, we're going to start in verse 16. Here's what he says. Just then, someone came up and asked him, "Teacher, what good must I do to have eternal life?" So I want you to understand this guy thinking he can do something to inherit this, okay? "Why do you ask me about what is good?" He said to him. "There is only one who is good. If you want to enter into life, keep the commandments." So the guy's like, "Okay, which ones?" Jesus answered, "Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, honor your father and your mother, and love your neighbor as yourself." So the guy's like, okay, that one, good. And then he gets to the end here and he goes, "I've kept all those." That's pretty impressive, to be honest with you. And then the young man goes, "What do I still lack?" "If you want to be perfect," Jesus says to him, "go sell your belongings and give to the poor, and you will have a treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." When the young man heard that he went away grieving because he had many possessions. Okay, let's make some clarity about this. Did you see why he went away sad? First off, let me show you. He came to Jesus. Now, we know from the last verse he had many possessions. So clearly, he is saying there's more to life than this. I have a lot of stuff. I've actually kept all of these commandments. What else is there? And as he's face to face with Jesus, Jesus says, "Hey, good job on keeping all those, but go sell all your stuff, give it to the poor. You'll have reward in heaven, and then come follow me." Now, look at this verse one more time, the last one. When the young man heard that, he went away grieving. Because is a conjunction word, because he had many possessions. He loved his stuff. He was actually there to follow Jesus. That's not what made him sad. What was sad is he had a decision to make. Do I follow this road that I'm continuing to be on of all this money and all the stuff I have, or do I deny that and then follow this one? Let me read you something that Kyle Idleman says about this. I think it's really well put. Jesus invites the man to become his follower. But first, this man is told to sell all his possessions and give to the poor. He's faced with the choice of following Jesus or keeping his stuff, but he couldn't do both. There's no way to follow Jesus without denying himself. Many people want to make this story about money, but it's not as much about money as it is as following Jesus. Jesus puts this man at a crossroads. You can follow the path that leads to money, or he can follow Jesus. But he can't follow both. Now, I want you to pay very close attention to this paragraph. You ready? So what does all this mean for you and me? Is selling everything a requirement to follow Jesus? Well, it may be. In fact, I would say the more defensive you are of Jesus' words to this man, the more likely it is Jesus might be saying them to you. What happened to you when you heard that? Like, what? Selling my stuff? Are you kidding me? That's what it's going to take for me to follow you? I just want you to be honest about what happened in your heart. Jesus didn't tell me to sell all my stuff when I surrendered to him. Now, the path that we've taken hasn't given me a lot of stuff, but I had to sell it all first. But that may in fact be what he's asking you to do. I don't know. This is between you and him. But you won't know until you surrender. There's going to be a moment at a crossroads where you have to go, okay, what is more important to me? What is true is that everyone who follows Jesus will find him or herself at a similar crossroads as this man in Matthew 19. You won't be able to take the path of following Jesus without walking away from a different path. He wanted to follow Jesus, but when forced to choose between Jesus and his stuff, he chose his stuff. He wouldn't deny himself. The question is, what choice will we make? It does not mean you will follow Christ perfectly, but you can't say, I'm a Christian, and then refuse to follow Christ when it comes to certain people, places, or practices. When we hear the word slavery today, it has a horrible meaning to it, as it should in our modern context. But in Jesus' day, people heard that word differently because there were a few different nuances to it. So you had a servant. A servant was someone who worked for somebody else. You had a slave. That's a person who was owned by someone for a variety of reasons. And then you had a bond slave. A bond slave was owned by someone, but it was voluntary. And this is something that none of us would have ever chosen when we were a kid, but this actually comes from the passage in Deuteronomy 15. So what happened is you would actually have slaves who maybe were owed a debt to you for 6 years. By year 7, you actually had to let this slave go. But if they came to you and they said, I actually love you and your family and my life is better off with you, I want to stay with you, that was a bond slave. You actually did own that man, his family, and his possessions because he voluntarily gave them to you. This is Jesus' invitation to us. Let me read you one more thing. Most of us grew up in homes where we were taught to study hard in school and in college so we could get a good job, make lots of money, live in a big house, drive a nice car, and enjoy great vacations. When you ask a child what they want to be when they grow up, the answers generally reflect that influence. But no one ever says, when I grow up, I want to be a slave. But that is what the Bible calls us to do. The Bible would teach that the highest calling for you is to be a slave who denies himself and follows Jesus. The highest calling for us, church, is to deny ourselves and follow Jesus. I was reading about Bill Bright this week, who founded Campus Crusade for Christ, which is a global college ministry. He wrote the 4 Spiritual Laws tract that has presented the gospel. More than 2.5 billion of these have been distributed around the world. He was central to the Jesus film that has been seen by 4 billion people in 660 languages, and I could literally go on and on and on and on. And if you would go visit his tombstone, there's 3 words on it: slave for Jesus. That's it. Nothing he did he wanted recognition or accolade for. He just wanted to be obedient to Jesus. Slavery is forced. Bond slavery is an invitation by Jesus that is never forced. Why would we do this? It's because of the master. I want you to hear these words, and after I'm done reading these words, we're going to watch a video, and then we're going to close today. The reason why we would become a bond slave to our master is very simple when you understand who your master is. Jesus invites you to deny yourself. He invites you to be a slave, but as a slave, may I tell you about my master. My master will provide for you. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He can take care of your needs. My master will protect you. He speaks, and even the wind and the waves obey him. My master has the power to forgive sins. If being a slave to sin has left you broken and bruised, and you find your life is in pieces, my master can take the pieces of your life and turn them into a beautiful mosaic. If you are worn out and exhausted, my master gives rest to those who are weary and heavy burdened. As you watch this video, make these words in it your own words.
Tasted the world, see more than enough. Its promise is fleeting. Of water and wine, I emptied the cup and found myself wanting. But there is a well that never runs dry. The water of life, the blood of the vine. 'Cause all I know is everything I have means nothing. Jesus, if you're not my worth, everything I need right now. All I need is you right now. Of this world I count it as lost. I lay it all down to take up this cross. 'Cause all I know is everything I have means nothing. Jesus, if you're not my worth, everything I need right now. All I want is everything you are and nothing. Jesus, if you're not my worth, everything to me right now. And I sing, I want nothing but to know you. It's to be with you, my God. And I sing, and with everything within me, I will worship you, my God. 'Cause all I know is everything I have means nothing. Jesus, if you're not my worth, everything I need right now. All I need is you right now.
Those could truly be our words, then this is where we would understand a total surrender. Like if really all we ever needed was Jesus right now. There's something in the world of real estate called a quit claim or a quick claim deed. It's where I can take my house and my possessions and I can write this form up and I can sign everything I have over to another person. I don't own any of it anymore. And I want you to reach in the seat pocket in front of you and I want you to pull out the piece of paper that is in there. Now, I want to make a few disclaimers before we do this. If you're sitting in this room and you are not yet a follower of Jesus, honestly, this really has not much to do with you. And it's not that we want to exclude you, but this is for people who are truly following Jesus, okay? Now, those of you sitting in this room that you're like, okay, I want to be all in for Jesus, but man, this is a lot. I am going to ask all of you to sign this today. But if you don't, I want you to look at me right now in the face, okay? Look at me right now. Remember Jesus' smiling face. I'm asking you, like, let's go all in, church. a total surrender. Like I sign all of this over to you, Jesus. I am ready to go. I'm joining a City Life community. I'm going to practice here at church. I'm going to practice around a table with my community. I'm all in. All these things, they're yours. I'm signing my name. They're yours. I quit claim them to you. But I want you to hear me. If you're sitting here and you are a believer in Jesus and this is too much for you, I didn't draw this line in the sand, Jesus did. And if you can't sign this, please do not leave without having a conversation with one of us. I just want to show you the grace and the love and the mercy that Jesus has. I don't want you to feel bad about this because, quite honestly, this is where we see our relationship with Jesus, and we have to decide, am I really following him or not? In church, I want to say one last thing. I would much rather have this really uncomfortable conversation with you here on earth than you to look at Jesus one day and have it with him. There's no do-over at that point. So I'm willing to have this uncomfortable conversation with you. If you're willing to say all of it, it's yours. Sign that. And I want you to put it back in that pocket, and we're going to come and we're going to get it. And if you put it back in there blank, that's okay. We're actually going to pull the lights down so nobody can see what you're doing. I just want you to spend some time with him right now. And I want to say one last thing, and I'm going to pray over you. This is not something that we should be wrestling with if we are truly believers in Jesus. He said, your belief starts your salvation. I now expect you to follow me. So church, let's not make this more difficult than it is. God, I pray for everyone who's watching online, everybody who is sitting here today. My heart is such that I'm so grateful that you impressed this on my heart 25 years ago. And God, the way that my life was before you, when I had not surrendered everything to you, there was so much turmoil and anxiousness. But God, when I literally hit my knees and I turned my hands over and I said, God, I cannot do this anymore. I surrender everything I have to you. My wife, my kids, my career, my future, it's all yours. The peace that entered my heart, God, I cannot even explain on this stage. I've never regretted it, and I've never, ever second-guessed this. I pray for these people who are sitting here today. Holy Spirit, please captivate their heart right now. Capture them with a sense of, okay, I can trust you. I do not fear this. I'm ready to go all in. God, I pray against an enemy right now who is distracting, who's lying, who's trying to get us to think of anything else except this. I pray against him in your name, Jesus. Let him have no place here. I pray, Father, that this is the first day of a lot of the rest of our lives where we're like, I'm in, Jesus. I pray that as we walk together practicing the way of you, Jesus, that we would make such an impact on this city because everybody is going to wonder what in the world has happened to us in an incredibly good way. Let us walk away from here different today, God. We love you, and we ask these things in your son's name. Amen. Hey, if you need to have a conversation with us, we're going to have some people over on the couches, some people in the back. Let us pray with you or let us have a conversation, okay? Go ahead and stand. Love you.
Thank